Okay, so today we want to do a idiot's guide to the situation in the Middle East. It's a clusterfuck, to put it to you bluntly. It's quite interesting to anybody paying attention to the details. There are a lot of alignments, a lot of very bizarre alignments, so we're going to try deconstructing it the best way we can for you. So I have here my partner in crime for the Kampuchea tapes. He's going to start us off to where it all began, ground zero, which is in Tunisia, and then we're going to keep moving forward, and then we'll give you a breakdown and analysis on the alignments as of right now, March 2015. So please start us off. What do we got going on here?
I love maps. Most Americans would not even have a clue what we're talking about here if not for the labels of the country. Then again, you're talking about a population that for the most part thought that Ukraine was all over the place, like in Iowa or in the Indian Ocean. So hopefully today's instruction will be quite instructive. So again, the Arab Spring, this all started in 2010, 2011 in the country of Tunisia here, nestled in between Algeria and Libya. And it began with a fruit seller who had his cart repossessed by the security services there, couldn't get it back, set himself on fire, and triggered this entire wave of protests and demonstrations throughout the Maghreb, North Africa region into the Arab Crescent in the Middle East. Of course, I think you're in agreement that the fruit seller who set himself on fire wasn't really he might have been the mechanism trigger.
It was a catalyst.
But this had been in the works.
Right. It's, I believe America and the European Union saw this as an opportunity to capitalize on their just imperialistic hegemony with the UN and, well, in my personal opinion, call it what you want, but a way of just controlling the world and a good way of causing chaos in the region. So let's continue. As we know, Tunisia's had a prime minister that was in power for quite some time. He's gone now. Tunisia is actually the most stable country that's come out of this whole Arab Spring. But Tunisia has always been somewhat of a secular, pretty nice country. You can go and visit. It's a peaceful country. You don't have to worry about getting your head chopped off, pretty much. So let's move along.
So to the east of Tunisia is Libya, and that should resonate with many people because it's in the news for the most part of the last 3 or 4 years, whether it be the uprising against the longtime dictator Muammar Gaddafi, the Benghazi embassy event.
We'll come back to that.
But Libya right now is, as the great journalist John Pilger describes it, it can only be described as a Hobbesian nightmare what happened to Libya. Now, that had always been at least when it was run by Gaddafi, a secular country, but he kept a lid on the religious fundamentalists, and of course that's thrown out the window now. Chaos, pure chaos in Libya. Next to Tunisia.
Now, I believe Algeria also had their government overthrown. I'm not 100% sure. There are jihadists in the southern region here, actually pretty much where the oil is, where you would expect them. In this region down here, there are in fact jihadists.
And there's a lot of Al-Qaeda remember there was a war a brief little eruption of war in Mali, just to the southwest of Algeria,
here,
which was mostly France.
More crazy people down here.
Of course, that used to be French West Africa, and Algeria was, of course, the cradle of French colonization efforts in Africa. But you don't really hear too much about that anymore. I think it was pretty much snuffed out. But I think Al-Qaeda is still there, at least.
Well, what we have to worry about now, as of March 2015, is that down here in Nigeria, Boko Haram has pledged allegiance to ISIS. Now, Chad, which is up here, has a relatively strong army. I do not think Niger has a strong army, but Chad's got a strong army because it used to have to offset against Gaddafi because Gaddafi invaded them in the 80s. So Chad has a strong army. Chad has now joined forces with the Nigerian army to combat Boko Haram. But this whole region here is wide open for Boko Haram. It's pretty much desolate wasteland of all oil fields. Now, if Boko Haram could go up and unite with the ISIS in Libya, because ISIS is now in Libya, that could, you're looking at some serious trouble right now. Unless these sub-Sahara countries Well, it is still Sahara, but some of them are arid and dry. But if they're not able to counter this threat, they're in for a hard time, and the citizens of these countries are going to be in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, so moving from Libya now to the east, you have probably the most powerful country in the Arab region, which is Egypt. Long-time dictatorship of Hosni Mubarak was overthrown. I'm sure many Americans are aware of that whole, the protests in the square, the overthrow of the government, the elections, the democratic election of the Muslim Brotherhood, the subsequent removal of Mohamed Morsi, the prime minister, from that democratically elected government to be replaced by the army led by Sisi.
But let's not forget on why they overthrew Morsi, and the fact was that he was Muslim Brotherhood, a major threat. He could have united all the jihadists if this man would have stayed in charge. He could have united all the jihadists across the whole region under the banner of the Muslim Brotherhood. Quite disturbing how our government wanted to see such a person stay in power in that region. Obviously, the military generals of Egypt saw this as a major threat to the stability of the country, and they obviously stepped in and go, no, this is not happening under my watch. Now, Egypt is blacklisted or not allowed to really take part in any UN councils or meetings or take part in any coalition fighting. So the government of Egypt is on their own right now, and they have aligned forces with the Libyan government. We'll get back to that in a second, but let's keep moving past Egypt. Let's go to Saudi Arabia, Yemen, and so on.
Okay, so you mentioned Obama and being unhappy with the removal of the Muslim Brotherhood from power in Egypt, sort of a subversion of democracy. Of course, there are other countries in this region which are not democratic, which are huge American allies, and that is Saudi Arabia, the major player along with Egypt, also probably the strongest Sunni Muslim stronghold in the region, with all the holy sites of Islam, Mecca, Medina. Military bases, American military bases stationed there as well. And they're a major player in this fight against ISIS. But I think you would agree that most of the jihadists in ISIS, whether they're in Syria, Iraq, Libya, a lot of them originate from Saudi Arabia.
Correct. They come from the deserts, places that no one wants to visit, no one wants to go. They come majority, I would say, upwards of 60 to 70% of the jihadists in ISIS or Team Sloppy Jihad in Syria, which is just Al Qaeda or any of your sham networks, your ragtag teams. They're all mostly, for the most part, from the Arab Peninsula, and yes, that's where most of them come from. You have some Chechnyan fighters. You actually have some Western Chinese fighting. I forget the name of the
Uyghurs.
Yeah, the Uyghurs are there. You have some Indonesians. You got a ragtag of everybody going on.
We can't even see China on
right,
our map here, but it's in the northwest part of China.
They're from all over the place, but we can honestly say for a fact majority of ISIS and jihadists fighting, creating this caliphate, are from Saudi Arabia.
Right, now those are the bodies, and as you say, the money to fund ISIS is right along the eastern part of Saudi Arabia, the little monarchy of Qatar and the United Arab Emirates. That's where I think most of the money is coming from to fund this.
Correct. So you're getting your people, your manpower is coming from Saudi Arabia, your money's coming from Qatar and UAE, but your logistical support and supervising the whole thing is, of course, the European Union and America.
Definitely. Down here in the south of Saudi Arabia, we have Yemen. Yemen was controlled for a long time by Ali Abdul Saleh, who was an American ally, just like Mubarak was in Egypt. But he has now had to leave after the wave of protests sweeping the region. Yemen, I think, has 3 separate civil wars going on right now. There's a jihadist insurgency in the south. There's a separatist insurgence in the north.
Well, they've always been separated. If you go back in time during the 1960s, there was always a split right about here. This area being the more normal, well, I call them more normal people, and over here are the more crazy people. They're just, for the monkeys out there, for you to understand, that over here is the more wealthy part. They just want to make some money, live a nice life. They're over here. Over here, no. This is the desert. This is ass fuck land, and this is where your crazies come from. Now, Oman, on the other hand, is a different type of Sunni Islam. They are not crazy. It's also a very wealthy country. They've kept their mouth shut throughout the whole thing. You have not heard a peep from this country.